Right, here we go. Hello, welcome to another episode of Rethinking Legal Ops. I'm your host, Ashwarya, co-founder and head of legal at Speed Legal. Today we have an amazing guest with us, Ashlee Best, the one and only. And we have another very, very special guest with us, Alejandro, as you can see him. Welcome to the show, Ashlee and Alejandro. Really, really looking forward to talking to you about all your work in legal ops. You're one of the leaders in this industry, and just so grateful to have you here today.
Yes, thank you. Admittedly, Alejandro does go by Alex, and he provides a lot of my inner peace in the legal ops world, which I know other professionals, moving, at the speed of light. If you need a comfort animal, I do recommend a turtle.
They're extremely wise creatures. I think he's listening right now and agreeing. I saw him nod a little. That's wonderful. And for all our listeners who don't already know, Ashlee has had a lot of experience working in legal ops. She's worked at Pandora, Dropbox, Asana. Need I say more? So just can't wait to dive in and ask you some of our questions that I'm sure our listeners are very, very, very curious to get your insights on. But to kick things off very quickly, or also just in case if you want to let Alejandro do his thing now, so we don't keep boring him. But I'm sure he has more interesting things to do.
Yes, he's off for his afternoon meditation.
Yeah, much more wholesome. But hey, I mean, if you think about it, legal ops and just sort of streamlining a lot of the legal work, that takes a lot of meditations. I think that's where his ideas come from. And actually, just to start things, can you tell us a little bit about your academic and professional journey and how you sort of ended up working with legal ops?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was at a tech company here in the Bay. This is many years ago, and my manager, at the time I was on the engineering side. I had worked with teams in L&D, HR. Most of my work was really project based, and a lot of it was implementations. And then at that time, I was actually doing hardware. So, putting in racks of servers and network attached storage in data centers. And my manager came up to me and said that, somebody on the legal team, was asking for help. And he wanted me to go over there and speak with this attorney. And it was really that conversation and then the project that came out of that conversation that really brought my awareness around just how creative the intersection of technology and legal actually is. In summary, it was the use case was the company had done, I think at that time, 80 mergers and acquisitions, and just all the records were were just all over, just all over the place, as you can imagine. And the employment team really just wanted a centralized way to access particular employment records. And so the project was really about bringing them that. It was an experience-based outcome. And that from there on, everywhere I worked, I volunteered to be the IT legal business partner. And I worked with so many talented lawyers and non-attorneys over the years. And it was, I think it was my job at Pandora where the GC pulled me aside and she said, you're doing this, you're doing legal ops. And I was like, huh. I hadn't heard of it. And then it just went on. I found Clock and all the founders, I would say, of just the role, and the Marys and Connies out there. So yeah.
That's wonderful. And I especially liked how you sort of talked about this. You were focusing on like an experience-based outcome, which is, back in, I think until like 2017, 18, a lot of lawyers were not even like thinking or talking about like, what the experience is like dealing with a bunch of legal documents. It was just something people saw as, yeah, it sucks, but like, we just do it. So it's really wonderful how like, I think like leaders, the legal ops like you and like Mary O'Carroll Ironclad have sort of changed that, over time. And I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into some of your experiences around sort of leading that type of this like new area of work. But before that, I want to get your insights on what is the significance of tech in general and scaling in-house legal teams.
Yeah, I think there's so many applications for it, where it really hits, kind of my passion and my heart is really around automation. And there's just always been a belief inside of me that people don't like doing repetitive work. Now, obviously, it's not an absolute. Especially, I have a daughter that loves structure and loves, not that it's repetitive work, but I would say more structure to her day. So I think in every role there's, or every team, there would be an opportunity for some people to be like, no, I like having this role. It's really clear. And then there's people like, I'd say more, I'm kind of on the other end where, I get bored. And just to be honest, so my passion's always been around automation as a way of leading to job satisfaction. Because back to this belief, I had a belief that, people will get, just also like me bored or start kind of having an existential moment. Like, am I here to, really, input contract metadata into a database? Is that like my life calling, or route things for signature? Just some of the things those are examples of things that are harder to automate. So that in and of itself, scaling a legal team, going back to the automation, processes that are predictable and repeatable, I think the legal tech, kind of movement can kind of pick up those and free up us humans to have more creative work, and I hope higher job satisfaction. Another big area is around metrics. So just understanding, kind of what is the universe of the work across the legal team, just kind of getting an understanding of that. That's a metric. How long do things take? How many things do I have? And once you establish those foundational metrics, and it could be just asking your team, it could just be as simple as just a gut, like how, I know you didn't count how many contracts came in, but about how many contracts do you think came in? That is a place to start. And that, I think, leads to really deeper, insightful conversations when it comes to, again, kind of taking the metrics and now layering in automation. Like where can we stop manually collecting metrics and automating it? Things like your product where I can see a day that, and if you have it already, just delete this out. But a day where the just the provisions in contracts, like where are the hot spots, and could that give a commercial team, insight into, hey, maybe we should rewrite this clause and make it more accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just the whole scaling, the budgets, for a while as well. I think you can kind of bring in people, and then at some point the leadership just really has to balance, does this make sense? Is the input and output, giving us the productivity that we had expected? What's going on?
I see. That's great. And I still really like, how you sort of like bring like the people element to this as a business. It's like, like higher job satisfaction, just having a better experience with these types of documents, defining metrics to, get things done faster. And do you think, Ashley, you talked about automation, like the parts of legal ops with regards to, like, just like tracking documents, like, starting there, knowing how many contracts you have, like the different values when expiring. Beyond that, what are some, you talked about also like some of the contract analytics. Can you unpack a little bit more about how exactly legal tech can optimize those processes?
Well, they can, if you're talking specifically just around contracts and knowing how many contracts are coming in, legal tech can actually count, through the intake process. We can at least start to track how many new requests came into the legal team. And in some cases, if you have a commercial team, specifically the commercial team, that would be one way of where technology can be at your fingertips versus what I had referred to a little earlier about manually, kind of after the fact. That comes to mind. Another thing around contracts is how long, once it comes in, how long, what's the quality of that request? I was about to jump to how long until there's a first response. And I do think a lot of teams are responding, when the request comes in and they're laying out, we'll get back to you, or, we have your request. You'll hear from somebody on our team, and, whatever their standard procedure is, a day. Some teams are same day. But I also think there could be some consideration about what's the quality of the request. Because just simply attaching a contract and initiating a request doesn't mean that the person on the other side could even get started.
Yeah, it's a very important point there.
Right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and when it comes to, planning around, what kind of legal tech tools to buy, or just in general, like, like tech strategy at businesses, like what are some of the key strategic considerations that go into that?
Yeah, that is really unique, I think, to the business, the size. I've had my philosophical approach to all this, and I'll zero in on contracting again because it's an easy area to discuss, is around records, like really understanding where your records are first has to be the consideration. From if you're building out a contracting program or strategy, you have to have them all, maybe not in one place, but you have to know where your major repositories are, at least, the inbound, the outbound world, or the revenue sales contracts versus the procurement or vendor contracts. Those should really be housed in one place. I've seen some teams try to jump in to the contracting world for whatever reason, at the metrics level is what I would call it, or kind of more the insights. Um, and it's, without really knowing where all your records are, the insights that people make around them are probably more open to, um, not criticism, but just like people want to trust the data, right? We've all been told in school, data doesn't lie. Data, yeah, and if you're somebody that's reviewing data and or your intuition is, I don't think this is the whole data set. It's hard to get to that kind of actualization or insight stage before doing this foundational work. And so I think just strategic considerations for kind of building out these programs is just start with the foundational work. If you're not quite sure what it is, it might be a new area that you're working on, reach out to your legal ops peers, because the community is big and growing, and someone somewhere will have done it and learned, and people like to share their experiences. So don't try to go alone. That's another consideration.
Yeah, yeah, that's so important to learn from other people and just have those sort of open conversations as speed legal when you're thinking about the product and stuff like that. We were, in late February, we were having these discussions around maybe we should have this feature, we should have that, and this is how the product should be. And we were like, you know what, let's just open up the conversation. The ideas that we're coming up with in a closed room, let's open it up and just talk to more people and properly understand what the pains are, what are the strategic considerations other people's are looking into, and just also talk about legal ops in general, because I've had so many conversations with my friends just privately about, yeah, the way legal work is done, it's not the best, it's not efficient, it needs to change. I just wanted to have a platform to do that, so we started rethinking legal ops, sort of thinking along those lines. It's so important just to reach out to people and talk to them, because they do genuinely want to help, and there's just so much you can learn when if you're just working alone in your office versus going out. I was speaking with another attorney that we interviewed on rethinking legal ops, and she Tara Trantham, she's amazing, and she told us that her company once had a contract that had been auto renewal free since 1996 or something like that. And no one really thought about it. And
Yeah.
it's when you connect with people, that's how you get these stories. And yeah, very very much agree. Businesses are people, so I just really resonate with sort of how you kind of bring everything back to the people element.
Yeah, people will help you sequence the work, because there's so much work in these areas, contracting, outside counsel, managing corporate entities. Like, they're almost jobs in and of itself. And I do see a lot of my legal ops peers having to wear many hats, and they get thrown so much. So yeah, like we're both reinforcing, talk to your network. Yeah. And then bring what you learn back to your team, right? And so it's you're opening up, you've connected some dots, and now the people that know your business the best can really optimize some awesome solutions.
Yep, yep, exactly. And I think that's also exciting, right? Because so much of legal work is now becoming more about crafting legal solutions rather than just giving legal advice, and that involves leveraging all these skills from different different disciplines. So a multidisciplinary approach. You go and talk to people, you go bring it back to your team, and then you create something innovative. I think that's just such an exciting time to be graduating from law school, or to starting out your legal career, because there's just so much you can do, and I'm grateful, for people like you who sort of like started these things, earlier, and now, we get to take advantage of this, the digital transformation of law. And Ashlee, what kind of tech trends are you currently most excited about?
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know if I could share this, but I'm most excited about what you're doing at Speed Legal. I know that this probably should not be, I understand that I'm here on a podcast, but it's really tied to that future of work. And just I saw, and I know you and I talked about it earlier in the week. It's just that accessibility. I had never heard it framed like that, and I just can't stop thinking about it. So, yeah, tech trends like future of work, and then how does legal fit into that? And and I think it was you or Hans Paul. Somebody was like, "Hey, the first contract you come into contact with is an employment agreement," and I'm living this with helping my neurodiverse daughter launch into the world, and I can't wait to have a product where I'm like, let's upload it to Speed Legal, and it will just break it down into clear words, and like what does this clause mean? It means this, because particularly my daughter, she would feel uncomfortable signing something if she hadn't walked through and understood. And I'm all she has is me right now, so I'm the one, and I'm not a lawyer, and so I get a little tripped up and have to do some searches on the internet, and then I can kind of spell it out. So the other thing I'm really excited about is just how the humans and the machines, the AI and the bots, substitute any non-human performing work. I'm really excited to see how that hopefully story might change over the years, because I don't know about you, but I feel like it's, at least in legal, I feel like it's been a little like we don't want your AI around here. Like we have a whole team of lawyers and
Billable hours.
yeah, but I just hope that story shifts to, we have this whole team of lawyers and we want to give them work that they want to do, that they feel more inspired, more passionate about, more impactful. I'm in outside counsel operations. I can't tell you how many times people have honed in on the in-house side to managing outside counsel simply because they want to have an impact, and they know, or they feel they have this current story in their head that the only way to have an impact is to control where the money's going. And if you're trying to change kind of a paradigm, or how law firms are billing, or how are law firms hiring, like I can't think of any other industry where the client is saying, who are you hiring? What does your diversity look like? And yeah, I mean, maybe there are. I mean, maybe I've been just too kind of isolated in my legal world, but it just seems like the more people I talk to, the more I hear, no, I really want to stay in this type of work because I want to have an impact on D&I, and diversity, inclusion, belonging, and I'd love to tack on accessibility. I hope there's an A in there somewhere. So those are the trends that I'm most excited about, and you hear a lot about that from me. So thank you for listening.
course. No, and I think those are all extremely important things. And I think we're like so beyond the phase where you just like, work is done the way it is. You just sort of learn strategies to deal with it, and like, you don't try to like change it. And I'm just so excited that, I mean, there's so many entrepreneurs out there, and like just like the opportunities are limitless. You could build something to solve one problem. You could do that for like a few years, and you can go solve another problem. So it's sort of a very, it's just exciting to be in the Bay Area, like in the Silicon Valley, like interacting with all these like innovators. I was recently speaking with someone who's working on like a VR ed tech tool for, especially for like neurodiverse learners. And he was, one of the few people I talked to was more like not approaching it as like a disability, which a lot of people talk about it as. Like, he was more like, our brains just work very differently, everyone. And, I
Yeah,
think we just need to leverage the power of how different each of our mindsets are, each of our brains are, and how they work. And that really is the future, of work, where everyone focuses on their strengths and then, like, adapts tools or strategies, whatever, to cope with areas that they're not so good at, because we can't all be good at the same thing. In the way that offices are set up and just the way we've been working, I think, for like centuries now, it doesn't really cater to that. It's like very sort of like standard. And I'm not even going to get started on like standardized testing and things like that. But
which I think is, I think it might have. By the way, if you're talking standardized testing like ACT, SAT, I went to a college fair and I don't think it's a thing anymore. I mean, unless it's like Ivy League or Ivy League. There are some universities that require it. Maybe, I don't know why, but at least in the neuro diverse communities, they have figured out that 1 4-hour test, and especially in a community where there's a lot of anxiety in that
Mhm.
community around test taking, that it's not reflective of 4 years of their high school work, and
Yeah,
so they're dropping it. They have
that's
dropped it.
wonderful. I'm so happy to hear this. I remember reading something like this, but wow, that's amazing. That personally makes me so happy. And I think in the legal industry as well, there's so many of our processes that we do need to optimize and change to, make room for like everyone to excel, because everyone can. It's just like different styles and techniques of working. And legal tech is, one of the keys that I see to opening that. It's what I'm kind of like personally, that sort of accessibility is very, very important to me. I think I've shared this with you before, but both of my parents are attorneys, so I kind of like grew up on hearing like, things like notwithstanding, force majeure, just tossed around at like the dinner table.
Wow, yeah.
and uh, and I mean, I would find it fascinating. I just thought that my parents were doing magic with language or something, like, coming up with all these words. But as they grew up and I started thinking about law school, I was like, wow, this is so inefficient, because what is law? Law is about communicating people's, like, a lot of them, like, things like contracts are communicating to people what are their rights and obligations, defining relationships, and implementing things and getting things done. And why do we need all this jargon? Because if we're initiating a relationship, it needs to start from a place of good communication, right? That's what we've been taught in like our interpersonal relationships. So why do we need
Yeah.
all of this jargon where you're having your lawyers sort of talk to each other? You don't understand what's in the contract. The other party doesn't fully understand, and it's just, I don't get it.
Yeah, yeah, you really summarized that well. And then in business, as a business grows, those relationships, and again, I'll just kind of narrow on contracting. Those relationships get a lot more complex.
Yeah,
If you're a company that wants to allow people that don't work at your company to sell your product, what does that relationship, the traditional kind of reseller,
yeah,
and then okay, maybe there's another company that they have to buy licenses from the software company, but you're going to do the services. So the relationships get more and more complex. and just elaborating your idea of, hey, if just kind of the basic contracting relationship isn't really accessible and just understood by just everybody easily, what happens when more complex relationships start being discussed and then put on paper? And yeah, it's this would just all be easy for, I think, most of the humans to understand.
Yeah.
So we don't need AI to tell us what. No, I'm just kidding. Like, what's the relationship? It's like we should at least figure out what the relationship is.
Exactly. Yeah. And, I was also like lately, I've been talking to a lot of students just on campus of Berkeley, and I'm like, I'm asking them, like, you received an employment agreement, and so what kind of a role is it? It's like, well, it's a job. I'm going to go work. And I was like, is it at will? Like, are you contract there? And they don't even know that much because, they're just like, I have a job. I'm going to sign this and just sort of move on. And then I asked some students, like, we did some surveys, and they're like, what do you think is the biggest reason that like you cannot, you can't get remedies for like, if something goes wrong with the contract? And a lot of them said, A, legal is too expensive. B, I don't know my rights because
Yeah,
legal is too expensive. And I think that's sad because, or these people, these are like capable, smart individuals. All they need is the language to be in an understandable format. And we don't need to keep the doors closed, within the legal community for something like
yeah.
that. So I'm very excited about, like opening up the world of law to everyone so they can have just as much fun with it, or if not fun, at least like, they can have as much ease with it as I enjoy it personally because it's
Yes, the ease. Um, because I was thinking about just our conversation before this moment, and I started to think, yeah, I know you guys are going to do it. You're doing it. You have really the right mindset, and I am cheering you on. And then I started to think, okay, if and I'm using my daughter as an example, like if my daughter sits down and now understands, like, what is this saying? What is she going to ask me next? And I'm wondering if something around risk, because everybody talks about risk in the contract, and ultimately reading and interpreting a contract, I'm wondering, is just a way of, is this contract risky? Like, what are you trying to decide? You're trying to decide to sign it or not sign it, or or negotiate, right? But at the end of the day, it's risk, and I'm curious if we could get to a future. This is probably, I'm such a big thinker. I don't know if it's even obtainable, but a future where it's not only kind of the contract and the context, like what is it saying, but then some sort of statistical analysis on 90% of employment agreements are this, like, because
yeah,
I still wouldn't, depending on my background or where I'm from, I still may not have what I need to sign it.
yeah,
So just that probability, the probability, like if you want to go with maybe a spicier clause,
yeah,
to close a deal,
yeah,
on the revenue side, it's like, what's the probability that this clause, you know, is something that will show up in court, because that's where I think us humans tend to go, is we kind of play it out, like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Oh, there's some sort of contract issue, you're in court. But I've heard also that not a lot of court cases are around contracts. So it's like, why do we spend so much time
yeah.
here? I'm curious. So
Yeah, yeah. Those are very good points, and I think just collecting that data and making it again like in an available and like an accessible format, like, hey, like this is the salary you've been offered, like the standard in this industry, like the time is this much, or the benefits package you're getting, like your insurance, things like that. This does not really comply with standard, or your confidentiality clause that you're committing to is like way too broad. Like they don't need you to commit to all these things. Or if you're a company, then like, hey, like, you could you're offering too much, or like, your confidentiality is not broad enough, things like that. I think wouldn't it be the dream for maybe like a legal ops manager or even a general counsel, where people can sort of go into the negotiation without having to write that email like, hey, what's like the standard, like, can you tell me? And like the GC is getting like 20 emails or something, like, as they wake up, and they're just getting all these answers that people could find the answers to with some level of automation. So just kind of bringing back the conversation of like ease and accessibility, how important do you think is ease of access and a good user interface for any legal tech tool, Ashlee?
Yeah, that's hands down. I think it's the most significant things a platform can offer. Really, I know I've probably said this so many times throughout my career, and some of my training classes early on, at some of smaller companies, I will start out by calming people by saying, if you can use Spotify or Map My Run, which are complex, right?
Yeah.
There's so many features in both of those platforms. So if you're a human that can figure those out without having to attend a lunch and learn or some sort of video of how to do it, or look up some sort of FAQ on an internal wiki. If you can manage those two platforms without doing that, I think that is the approach we need to have for the intuitive UI.
Yeah.
And, that's where I do think some of the newer technologies in the market are challenging the older ones. Is you don't have to have a team of people writing, training over and over again, because as soon as it's written, the next day it's outdated.
Yeah.
I'm being, obviously a little dramatic, but I mean, it's I think just my philosophical approach is really, I mean, there may have to be training about the words you're using, kind of the business acumen, right? And like, what does role mean here, or permission, because they can get a little nuanced. But once you train people on the vocabulary that the platform uses to interact with you, I think that's where customers will become, a company's kind of teacher. Because as soon as somebody really knows, like, you want your customers to be able to pick up the technology and run with it.
Yeah.
Like having like a strategy of, oh no, we're going to charge this for, ongoing training. And, again, some roles like administering, I think probably would require a higher level of some sort of training. But, just the day-to-day end user, I think should just be able to approach the software, get in, get their work done, and get out without too much trouble.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I also remember, like going back to my conversation with like Colin Levy from Melbeck, asked him the same question, and he said, sort of like similar things along the lines as you're saying. And he was also saying that, if you have good relationships with like people, like if you do seem like a person that's genuinely trying to solve a problem for them and make their lives easier, people would also be a little bit more open to like, make that effort, and to getting used to your technology and learning it. And going back to your point about Spotify, like we want to listen to music, right? Like it's something that we like doing. There is some level of dopamine that we get in our brain, like, interacting with this app because it gives us music at the end of it. And I think those 2 points together are just so important for like, legal tech innovators and founders to think about, like, get to a place where people can really hear the music, and like they know that you want them to hear like the music that they want to hear, with the experience of using this particular tech tool. Wow. Thank you for all your insights, Ashley. This has been a wonderful conversation. I've learned so much. I tried taking some notes as you were talking as well, and I'm sure all our listeners really enjoyed this conversation and your vast knowledge in this field and your sort of empathy driven approach towards like people and like understanding like what the needs are and their experiences is truly it's that's something I really admire. So thank you for being here and sharing with us today.
Yeah, thank you. You and Hans Paul and everybody at Speed Legal are also inspiring. And yeah, my turtle and I will be there for you guys. Whatever you need. You need some testers or feedback anytime.
So thank you very much, Ashley. Really appreciate that, and thank you also to our listeners for tuning in. And remember, we're here every week on Thursday with more amazing guests. So stay tuned and have a good weekend.